Hello, welcome to the Crochet Cakes YouTube channel. Today we're going to be learning how to crochet this stocking. In order to crochet this Christmas tree stocking, we're going to be needing the Christmas tree granny square pattern, which I've shared previously. And in accordance with that tutorial, we're going to be using two different colors of worsted weight yarn. The first one will be for the Christmas tree, and then color number 2 will sort of be later the main color because it's the one we're going to be using to finish off our granny square and also to join. In addition to these materials discussed in the Christmas tree granny square tutorial, we are also going to be needing some fur trim. So in this case, I'm using Fable fur from We Crochet, and the yarns that I am using as well are from We Crochet. This is their Brava range. The green is in the color Dublin, and the gray brown around it is Mink in Brava Tweed. You will also be needing a 4.5mm crochet hook and some patience because we're going to crochet 18 granny squares. In terms of the construction of this stocking, we're going to be working the granny squares individually, and then we are going to be whip stitching them together. In the video tutorial, I'm preparing some charts to guide you along with the joining of these granny squares. So let's get started. In order to make our stocking, we are going to need 18 granny squares. And you can make normal granny squares if you wish, but I am going to be using the Christmas tree granny square pattern that I shared previously. So, yeah, nothing for it. I'm just gonna continue along making 18 of these granny squares. And once I have several granny squares put together, I'm gonna show you what it's gonna look like, the shape of our crochet stocking. Once we have our granny squares complete, it is time to start seaming them. And we're going to start by seaming the leg of the stocking as shown in the diagram. In order to seam our granny squares, I'm going to be using whip stitches, and I'm going to be placing the granny squares right sides facing, and starting at the chain 2 space, I'm going to start whip stitching down the side. Whip stitching involves inserting your needle into the top of the double crochet stitch of the granny square facing you and the corresponding stitch of the granny square that's away from you, and you're simply going to pass that yarn through. And you're going to keep repeating this sequence of inserting your needle granny square closest to you, granny square furthest from you, passing the needle through. In order to form the leg of the stocking, we are going to need 3 rows of granny squares. And each row has 2 granny squares, and we're seaming it right down the middle. So if you look at the left screen, that is that pink line, a pink arrow. Right down that middle, we're just going to whip stitch. Continue joining our third granny square row the same way, placing the granny squares right sides together and seaming down the middle. Now that we have 3 rows of granny squares joined down the middle seam, we're going to take that top row and we're going to fold it so that it's right side facing to the center row, and we are going to whip stitch from right to left. And we're going to do the same for the bottom row. We're going to take that bottom row of granny squares, fold it into the center so it's right side facings, and whip stitch. Now we're going to add 2 more granny squares to our stocking section because this is going to be forming the heel turn / foot of our stocking. To this 4th row, we're going to be adding another granny square on the right hand side, and I'm simply going to be whip stitching it together. But this 4th row is going to form the foot of our stocking. We're going to add a granny square to the 3rd row on the right hand side, which is right on top of the granny square we just did. And we're going to seam that at the bottom and the left hand side. So in the diagram, we have 2 squares that are blue and separated, and those are the squares that we're going to be folding over to create the shape of our stocking. With this last seam done, we finish the front panel of our stocking. For the seamed front panel, this is our final look at the moment, so it really just looks like a little grid. Now, for the back panel, we're also going to start forming the stocking section, which is 3 rows of 2 granny squares each. And that's going to look something like what you see on the little diagram on the screen right now. Comparing the diagram of the stocking side by side, you can see that the front and back panel are mirror images of each other. We just need to make sure that when we're seaming our stocking wrong sides facing, the folded grannies that, will become triangles are exactly where they need to be. So for the 4th row of the back panel, we're going to be skipping the rightmost granny square, and we're going to be placing our granny square under the left column. Okay, so we're just going to whip stitch it together, and again, you can reference the diagram right on the screen to get a better idea of where I'm crocheting these granny squares, or stitching these granny squares. Once we've completed our stocking panels, it is sadly time to weave in all these ends, and there are quite a bit of them, so I will leave you here and meet you back when we're actually ready to seam the stocking together. After you've woven in as many ends as your sole can take, which for me it was this amount, we're going to place our panels wrong sides facing, and the back panel facing you, we're going to start seaming with single crochet stitches on the topmost corner of the left hand side. The only place where I'm doing more than one stitch, or should I say a decrease, it's where the granny squares are joined. And that is because if we just do two single crochets in the corner space and then we move to the next corner space where we would do two single crochets, there's going to be a bit of a divot or a gap that I find a little unseemly. After completing the two single crochets in this granny corner, I'm actually going to insert my hook into the chain two space of the granny square in the front panel and of the corresponding chain two space in the granny square on the back panel. And once I do that, I am going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Then with that loop on the hook, I'm going to insert my hook into the next chain two spaces, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the three loops on the hook, and we've completed our single crochet decrease. I am also going to go into the same chain two space and complete another single crochet. And as you can see, by doing that one decrease, we've decreased the gap in the chain two space area. Now I'm just going to continue along working my single crochet seam until I reach my chain two intersection once again. Now we've reached the point where we need to fold our granny square to kind of create that little triangle that will transition us from the stocking into the heel and into the boot as well. So in order to do that, we actually have three granny corners that are connecting right here. Let's pin the point of our folded granny square so that we remember that we need to stitch this folded. So I'm adding my stitch marker to a chain two space and connecting it to the point, the chain two space of the folded granny square. To join at this intersection of 3 chain 2 spaces, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook through the first chain 2 space, insert the hook through the chain 2 space of the granny square behind us, and then to the folded granny square. We're going to yarn over and pull through all these chain 2 spaces. Then we're going to yarn over and complete our half double crochet. Once we've joined all these chain 2 spaces together, we are left with granny stitches, right? And we're just making sure that these granny stitches are aligned so that we continue working our single crochet join up until we reach the next granny corner intersection. We've once again reached our chain 2 space intersection, so we're inserting our hook into the chain 2 space of the granny square we were working into and into the folded granny square, and we're doing a single crochet. Next, we're going to locate our following chain 2 space intersection, and we're going to insert our hook there. So, sorry. I Okay, now we're going to locate the next chain 2 space of the bottom granny square, and we're going to insert our hook into that chain 2 space right here. And then we're going to insert our hook once again into the folded granny square, and we're going to do another single crochet. Now our folded granny square and the bottom granny square are all set to continue doing our single crochet join by working one single crochet in each stitch. We've again reached a granny corner intersection. So we have the chain 2 space of the front panel that's facing us, and then we have the chain 2 space of the folded over granny square, and finally the chain 2 space of the back panel. And we need to join all of these together to avoid a gap. In order to do that, we are going to be working a decrease. Insert our hook into the front chain 2 space. Insert our hook into that back chain 2 space again, yarn over, pull up a loop. Don't complete the single crochet. Insert your hook into the back granny stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. And we have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, and complete your single crochet decrease. And that connects the 3 sides efficiently without a gap. And now we are going to continue down the row, lining up, lining up our stitches. I'm moving our stitch marker to the bottom chain 2 space of the granny squares, and I'm just pinching those together with the stitch marker and moving along, working a single crochet to join the front panel granny square to the back panel granny square. Once we get to that marked chain 2 space, I'm simply going to place one single crochet here, and that will force the little point to just round and tuck in a little bit more. And then I'm going to continue by working a single crochet join until we reach the next granny square that needs to be folded over. We've reached our 3 chain 2 spaces. So we have the chain 2 space of the granny square in front of us, the chain 2 space of the granny square behind, and then the chain 2 space to the left. So what we're going to do once again is insert our hook into the chain 2 space of the granny square in front, the granny square behind. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and complete a single crochet. Now once again, we're going to be inserting our hook into the chain 2 space of the granny square in front, the chain 2 space of the granny square behind. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop. And now we're going to leave these 2 loops on the hook because we're going to insert our hook into that 3rd chain space. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull up a loop. We're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through the 3 loops to close our single crochet decrease. Okay, so now we've connected these 3 granny squares in the chain 2 space. And we're going to take the top left chain 2 space and we're going to fold it and bring it to the bottom right here. And we're going to be placing a stitch marker in these chain 2 space right across from the folded chain 2 space. Next, we will be working single crochet stitches from the point that we're at until we reach the intersection of these 4 chain 2 spaces. I will meet you back here so that we join this intersection together. Reached the 4 granny corner intersection, and these chain 2 spaces need to be joined smoothly so that we can continue seaming beautifully along our work. So what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be inserting my hook into the chain 2 space of the granny square we're currently working with. So right in this chain 2 space, I'm going to be inserting my hook. Then I'm going to grab the folded over granny square, and into that chain 2 space, I'm going to be inserting my hook. I'm going to be yarning over, pulling up a loop. And now I'm going to yarn over, complete the single crochet. I'm going to turn the work a little bit because now we're going to be working into the next chain 2 space and the folded over chain 2 space. So right here is we're going to be joining and doing a single crochet. We move on to the next chain 2 space of the granny square, but we're still joining it to the chain 2 space of the folded over granny square. So that means that in the folded over granny square, we are working 3 single crochets. And this will turn our work so that now we can start joining the stitches at the bottom of the folded granny square. We've once again reached a chain 2 space intersection, so I'm going to be inserting my hook into the chain 2 space of the granny square in front, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the chain 2 space of the folded over granny square, and I'm going to yarn over, pull that yarn through, and I'm going to yarn over and complete the single crochet. Now I'm going to insert my hook into the same 2 spaces, and I'm going to yarn over, pull up a loop. Then I'm going to move over into the chain 2 space of the back panel, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through the 3 loops on the hook. And this way we've completed all of our chain 2 space intersections, and we're just ready to continue seaming up the side of our stocking. Remember that we're going to be doing a single crochet to join, but in the chain 2 spaces we are going to be doing decreases to minimize the gaps. Top of the stocking, the last stitch that we do is going to be into that chain 2 space. This is our last join stitch. And this is what our stocking is looking like at the moment, but we are not done yet. We're going to work a single crochet border in the mink color, but this border is going to be done without joining our front and back panel. So that means we're working independently in the front panel and the back panel. We're just going to be working single crochet around. Again, being careful not to join our panels, not to seam them shut. So inserting my hook into the first double crochet, I'm going to be working a single crochet, and I'm going to continue along the row in this manner, always being careful not to seam our stocking shut. I will meet you back here when we reach the first chain 2 spaces. When we reach the next intersecting chain 2 spaces, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that first chain 2 space, yarn over, pull up a loop. Then we're going to go over to the next chain 2 space. We're going to insert our hook, and we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4 loops on the hook. So we yarn over and we pull through all 4 of those loops, and this completes our decrease to join these chain 2 space intersections. Now we're just going to continue working single crochet in each stitch until we reach another chain 2 space intersection where we will do the previously mentioned decrease. I will meet you back here when it is time to join in the round. Alright, we've completed this one round of single crochet stitches, and we still have our minked yarn attached. What we're going to do now is that we're going to make some foundation single crochet stitches to create our hanging loop. So inserting our hook into that loop, we are going to insert our hook into the base of the single crochet we've just completed. So into that same stitch, we're going to yarn over and we're going to do our first foundation single crochet. Now we're going to do 2 foundation single crochets, And we're going to continue working foundation single crochet stitches until the loop is as large as we wanted. I did 12 foundation single crochets, and I will meet you back here to join these foundation single crochet stitches and actually form our loop. When your loop is the desired length, we're going to fold it over and we are going to join at the base of the stitch. So that would be the stitch that we first started our foundation single crochets from. So this stitch right here, we're going to insert our hook there. Once again, we're inserting our hook into the single crochet at the base of our loop, and we are going to just slip stitch the last loop, and then we're going to slip stitch again to secure to the base of the single crochet. And there we have our loop. Now we are ready to cut our yarn and fasten off and tightly secure our loop by weaving in our end. But we are not done with our stocking yet, because now we're going to add our trim. Any good stocking has beautiful trim at the top, and ours is going to be no exception. To make our trim, we're going to be using Fable fur, which is a super bulky weight furry yarn, and a 7mm crochet hook. To add our festive fur trim, all I'm going to be doing is doing a single crochet in each stitch. Now I am attaching the furry yarn to the left of my loop. So the first stitch at the left of the loop, I'm going to be attaching my Fable fur, and I'm simply going to attach with a chain 1. Now I am going to do a single crochet in each stitch. I even went around our loop with the fur yarn. I just did a single crochet in each of our foundation stitches. And now I'm going to be working the last single crochet of the round. And after we do that, we're just going to cut yarn and fasten off. And then we need to weave in our end. Now, I know that's a little bit tricky given the fact that we're using this yarn that hides the stitches really well. So we're just going to kind of have to feel all our way through the stitches so that we can weave in our end properly. And I know with this yarn it can be a little hard to see, but stay tuned because next week we're going to be learning how to crochet this large Christmas tree granny square. And of course we'll have a project to go along with it.